I'm Marlon Fick, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the process of the inception of a book to its final stages of preparation and publication. It can be a joy and it can be a great pain. One of the great joys of this project is that it's collaborative. I know that we do some of this in 1301. I see 1301 students where you have to work with other people. This is a thorn in my friend Clark here is doing collaborative writing right now. We can relate to how painful it can be collaborating with other people. Where Jean-Paul Sartre said, hell is others. So there is this is like Tempus Fugit, just like this time of the year when you're turning in your finals and the teachers are in their grading days and everything is flying by so quickly. The closer you get to publication, the more changes there are to make quickly. One of those is the painting that you see here will not be the book. Because we went to the Wallace Stevens Foundation. This is painted by Francisca Esteve, my collaborator, my #1 collaborator. She's right here. Would you stand up, please? She is Catalan. Before you say, some people would say she's a Spaniard, but I think she would say she's Catalan. We are going to change the cover, therefore the title of the book will change from Geja, how to pronounce that, Geja, which is a Catalan word for a very rare and special kind of wheat, signifying abundance, grace, all the beauty that you could read from the pages of this particular book. It will still be a painting by Paquita, but with permission from the Wallace Stevens Foundation. Holly Stevens is a daughter of Wallace Stevens that owns the rights to Wallace Stevens' work. We would like to call the book Beyond the Genius of the Sea, because if you know anything about Catalan or Valencia or the Balearic Islands, you know that all the poets from that area have grown up by this Mediterranean Sea or on the sea. I need to tell you a little bit about my collaborator, because she's 50%, if not more, of this project. She was born in Valencia, which is under the domain of Spain, part of Castilian Spain. But the culture is Catalan, and the people are Catalan. They're all Catalan speakers. And Valenciano is slightly different title of Catalan in other places. So I am collaborating with somebody who is familiar, in fact, with all three of the major dialects of the language of Catalan. She has a mother who is Valenciana. She had gone to school as a child. First they moved her as a baby to Barcelona, where the principal dominant dialect of Catalan is Catalunya. But her teachers are from Menorca, which are those islands, Menorca. So she knows words in all three dialects of the language. And that's one thing we'll stress today is that Catalan is not a dialect of Spanish. It is not. And we'll see how that happens. Okay. So if you're in 1301, if you're collaborating on a project with someone, from experience, I prefer not to collaborate. To be honest with you, I prefer not to collaborate. But some richness comes out of those collaborations. And the closer you get to the publication, the more collaboration there is, because you're dealing with copy editors, you're dealing with the publisher and other people's tastes and their particular views. I had my introduction to this book eviscerated, completely eviscerated. And they were right. I have to confess, I went on a diatribe about deep poetry, and I'm not a fan. But there's an influence right now, of our deep poets from the 50s and 60s on Catalan literature. Right? So one thing I'm going to start with is this idea that I think we have transmitted this. I didn't realize until this morning that nowhere in our composition handbook that we put together here, I'm hoping to join that process with the writing teachers. But there's no chapter here on that says writing is fun. Research is fun. Research. It's not always about your nose in a book. It's not always about where you put the in-text citation, how you phrase it. Let's see this next slide. Research can take you to exotic places. In the fall of 2015, the idea for this book didn't come from Francisca, who's here, and it didn't come from me. We were at a conference in a beautiful place called Truchas in New Mexico, up near Santa Fe. And it was a lovely place. About 15 writers were gathered there. And the publisher of Tupelo Fest said, "Why don't you guys translate the Catalan poets?" You know, it's so important because Franco wouldn't allow them to use their own language. The fascist dictator of Spain. Remember, after the World War II, America and the Soviet Union, England defeated the Nazi threat. But that didn't happen in Spain. The world turned its back on Spain, and Franco was successful there. So the World War II really begins as a testing ground for the Nazi Luftwaffe and their allies, the Italians, and the bombing of Barcelona and Guernica, and that's where the Germans are practicing for the Second World War. So it really starts in 1936. So Franco is in power from 1939 to 1975. So in that period of time, it was illegal to speak in Catalan. She was overheard speaking in Catalan in the street, at the street corner, those guys playing with their hats with that three corners on. Those guys would say, "Speak Christian. I'm a Cristiano."
Yeah.
In too many cases, it wasn't just a warrant. It was prison or execution. And so it's estimated, nobody really knows how many, a lot of people disappeared and nobody knows exactly how many, but a lot of people estimate somewhere over 1 million people in the post-Civil War period during Franco's time. So, anybody know where that picture's taken? That's Plaza Catalunya, in the middle of Barcelona. Okay. If you, right over in that corner was where that terrorist attack happened about 2 months ago. So right there. So these are the tricornials. People are very careful about it. They would say, it's like in Eastern Europe, under the post-war Eastern Europe, you have to be very careful about what you talk about, what you say, or you could be arrested and you could disappear. So the idea of this book is to bring to life many of those voices that were silenced. Having said that, everything in this book has appeared in Italian and German and Spanish, some in English, not well distributed in English. But they're superheroes. They're rock stars in Europe. They're names that we've never heard. Juan Marguerite, Marius Samper, shortlisted for the Nobel Prize. These are really important people. We could be walking down the street with Juan Marguerite, and people would see it. It's like, there's Paul McCartney. Who's he with? So, did a lot of that. A lot of that happened. George Orwell wrote a book called Homage to Barcelona. And he wrote that book in support of democracy. In that same cafe is where my collaborator, Aziza, it's Cafe Mocha, it's where she had her clandestine meetings with compatriots to subvert the Franco government. Now, she herself personally didn't involve herself in setting off bombs. Her activities were limited to distributing the language, keeping the literature alive, hidden away under cushions in the house, hidden away in the trunk of the car, but keeping the language alive through the Franco years. The first introduction to the book I submitted to Tupelo Press. They said, you know, everybody's going to be asking you about Catalonia's the surge and the separatism and the desire for independence. And everybody's heard about that on the news, so you better rewrite this. And you know, why don't you just do the history of Spain and do it in 15 minutes? So I said, you're kidding me, right? They weren't kidding. They actually weren't kidding. Now, please don't write down how many sentences I say, because I'm not sure if I kept it in the 15, but it's fewer sentences in PowerPoint. That's the flag of Spain plus the blue, the star, the blue and the white, to indicate independence from Spain. My response to the publisher at first was say, yo, wait, we have relatives on both sides of that line. We have relatives in Madrid, in Sevilla, in the south. We have relatives in Catalonia. We don't want to be political. We'd rather stay out of this so we don't upset anyone. He said, you can do it. So officially, we're not taking a side. The majority in Catalonia opposed separatism. At least they did until Madrid showed up with their police and started hitting old ladies over the head with sticks. And I think people got pretty angry. So the history of Spain, well, after the Iberian tribes, or at the time of the Iberian tribes, which is pre-recorded history, the Greeks established a trading colony. They did not invade, but in Ampurias, which is now modern-day Girona, the Greeks established a trading colony. There's a picture of it here of, thanks to, I had my students collaborate in this. I think it's given to me by Jasmine. And they're providing me with this. So that's, you know, more than 500 years before Christ. We say BC, BCE, meaning before the Common Era. And after that, the Romans. The Romans went a lot everywhere. And everywhere they went, what language did they leave? Mm-hmm. They left Latin. So when they went to France, French is the Latin basis for French. They went to Italy, they were in Italy. It becomes the basis of Italian. Spain becomes the basis of Spanish, and it becomes the basis of Catalan. Also Romanian, right? It's like the closest living language to Latin. And you'll see some examples. But they arrive And they do conquer the entire Iberian Peninsula. They access it right through where Barcelona is today, in the northeast corner of Spain. But you know, their society overspent. I think that at the time Caligula, their deficit was around 2-point-something trillion, 3-point-something trillion. Oh no, that's our deficit.
No, no.
The Visigoths overpowered the remaining Romans in the Iberian Peninsula in the 5th and 6th century. We still haven't a fully developed language yet. We're not even to Catalan or Catalonia. So they pushed the Romans out, but lo and behold, they leave a power vacuum there that enables the Arab peoples called the Moors to come in, and this radically changes the nature of Catalan. It changes also the language of Spanish. What do you call this we're standing on? No, that's Arabic. Alfonso. What do you call this? Mesa. In Arabic, Persian, Misa. And so these languages, I mean, we had that in English too. We usually place it over the top of the mountain. It's a tabletop. So the languages, Catalan and Spanish, become infused with Arabic. The rich culture. And don't confuse that culture with extremism in any way, because it was a very open culture. In fact, the Moors of Spain were criticized by other groups in North Africa for being too open. You know, how dare you marry Christians? You shouldn't pollute yourself by marrying Christians. But they did. And they were a very learned culture, and they left an amazing legacy of ours throughout Andalusia and upwards. Charlemagne comes along in the 8th century. I think I have a slide. Yeah, there he is. Charlemagne pushes back. You know, the Moors decided to go over the Pyrenees Mountains, the mountain range that separates France and Spain. They want to go over the mountains, and Charlemagne pushes back, as does his grandson, Charles Martel, pushes back and keeps the Moors located in Spain. But for a great number of years, the Moors ruled over the peninsula. Now we're getting to the time where Catalan becomes, is at least in recorded history, Catalan is establishing itself as a language. And that happens with the marriage of these two lovely people. Princess Petronilla of Aragon. She's from Aragon. This is a neighboring region, and she speaks Spanish. Count Ramon Berenger IV is a Catalan. Well, this is really important because it's essential to understanding this union that has brought about things that are still going on right now in Spain. Because of their union, they had this marvelous relationship. The princess would say to the Count, why don't you keep your language? Let your people speak Catalan. Keep all your administrators, your ministers. Keep your culture. Oh, my dear, that is so kind of you. Why don't you do the same? Let's combine them on this. Let's get those things together. And so for the next century, you see an expansion of Catalan culture. I have one map to give you an idea. It actually went beyond with the, there's a little pointer here, isn't there? Oops. A little clicker. Anyway, you can see where this is all autonomous Catalonia here. To the left of that is Aragon. And there was a little spot too, is Catalan as well. The empire takes Catalan culture all the way down to Galicia, over to the Balearic Islands, and then even Sardinia and part of Italy, which is the reason why there's Italian in Catalan. So if you were to look at a page of Catalan, you'd see cognates that were Italian, you'd see cognates that were, of course, Spanish as well. Just as we see so much Arabic in both Spanish and Catalan. Now, the modern day border looks like that. And so a great number of people, this is Aragon, this is Catalonia, there's Andorra, right? This is Valencia, these are the Balearic Islands. So the people say, so you're a Catalan, but you live in Spain, if you're a Valenciano. But everyone still speaks Catalan. Catalonia has made arrangements with the rest of Spain to remain autonomous, to keep its own government. In the 1931 Constitution, the 1931 Constitution, before the Civil War, granted Catalonia full autonomy. It's its own country. That gets interrupted by the Civil War. But by 1978, there's a new Constitution, and that's what all the fuss is about today. Because in the new Constitution in 1978, there's a little article called Article 144, which I've read about 20 times and still don't understand it. And nobody does. But the gist of it is, according to Madrid, the gist of it is that Catalonia is only semi-autonomous, kind of like an Indian reservation in the United States. You know, semi-autonomous, but our FBI can go there anytime they want. You know. On that white horse, Felipe V, or you might call him Philip V, falls under Spanish dominion. So these are the two times in history where Catalonia is dominated by Spain, or by Castilian Spain. Under Philip V, the dynasty, the Habsburg dynasty, which is Austrian, collapses. Charles II was a Habsburg. He was the last Habsburg. And he ruled over Catalonia, which is why there's German in Catalan. Are you tracking on this? Can you hold all this in there? The history of Spain, 15 sentences. So he's victorious, and like our modern day Franco, he didn't allow Catalans to speak the language. It had to go underground again. Practically speaking, though, it's been a viable language for about 800 years. We know of possibly 1,000 as a distinctive culture. Now, earlier I mentioned some differences in the, well, this is a copy of the 1931 Constitution. This is a picture of Franco with his buddy Adolf Hitler. And this is a famous photograph in Life magazine. It's very hotly controversial, debated that somebody, I don't believe it, but somebody said it's staged. I don't think it was staged. I think it's real. But we can be that as it may. It was a horrible war. And the Republican forces in Catalonia were no match for Franco, especially with the help of the Italians and the Germans. To make matters even worse, the church, the Pope at this time is far, far different than Pope Francis. Had Pope Francis been there? But Pope Francis decides that, hey, Franco is pro-Rome, he's pro-church. Kind of like saying that, you know, if you don't believe in Donald Trump, you know, you're not a Christian. This is kind of parallel. And there's Pope Pius next to Franco. So Rome gives their support to the fascists. And that was a really bad taste in the mouth of Catalan. I was walking through the Gothic section. We were walking actually through the Gothic section, and we overheard a conversation. A Spanish tour guide speaking in English to a group of American college students. Right? And one of them said, "Oh my Lord, you have so many beautiful cathedrals in one town. The Catalan people must be really religious." And she says, not so much. They're mostly there for cultural heritage and to view the beauty of the architecture. The one thing that unifies the writers in this book is that even though their style of writing differs radically, they are uniformly anti-religious. I'm not saying they're anti-spiritual, I'm just saying they're anti-institution, because the church really the Roman church took a wrong turn when they sided with fascists. And there weren't any other options. You know, couldn't go to Pastor Don's church. This is my pastor. Who would let anybody in the door? Go figure. I mean, does that include Nazis?
Conversion might be required, but they do not.
So this is the Constitution that Madrid is using right now to arrest the president of Catalonia, Puigdemont. He was recently released, in addition to other members of the Catalan government. He was arrested in Belgium, and when did they release him? About a week ago?
Yeah, but it's not in Spain,
He's still in exile. There are a few conditions for a language to become really viable for literature. For one of the obvious conditions for a language to become powerful is that it's built on an empire. Latin, for example, is major language. Okay. Spanish is a huge language because it had an empire. Now, Catalonia didn't take part in the conquest of the New World, what they called the New World, which was really very old. That's Andalusia in the south of Spain that comes to Mexico goes throughout Latin America to steal the gold, take the silver back. They take it on barges up the EEUU.Paquita to a fortress, and they store their gold there. I mean, just a ton of wealth. And Catalonia didn't have any part in that. So one of the conditions for this, for a language becoming powerful, is that it has an empire. Another condition is that it is written. You take an oral language and you put it next to a written language, and the written language will destroy the oral. So I came to University of Texas, Permian Basin, from the Navajo Reservation. The struggle there was to get books into Navajo. Because traditionally it's oral language. They're going to lose their language. On 3 million speakers, they're going to lose it if they don't start printing more books. They need a printing press in the middle of the reservation, not in Flagstaff. You know, and they're catching on. They're putting Navajo back in schools. And they can take their lesson from Catalonia. As soon as Franco was gone, publishing houses sprang up all over the city. There is enormous publishing industries. They're among the most read people in the world, reading in Catalan, going to school in Catalan, all their signs are in Catalan, and so on. If you're a tourist who speaks Spanish, no problem, they'll turn and speak Spanish. But Catalan is the language they're using all the time. And it's because, in part, to this man, Ramon Yu writes, Zebra Amik Yamat. Zebra Amik Yamat. Amik, what's that word sound like? Amik. Amik! Amik, ¿cómo estás? Friend. And Amat. Amat. Amor. Book of love and love. And it's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. Writing about the same time as François Villon and Geoffrey Chaucer. And so I just had surgery, and I'm half my body is filled with liquid valve. So you'll have to tell me how I'm doing. I don't even know if I'm making sense. Okay. Thanks for that. My wife is going to have my head because I read my pronunciation in Catalan is just flooding off it. But I want you to hear this because you can see, though, I know there are a lot of Spanish speakers here, and you'll hear it and you'll know this is not Spanish. Esta razón alive, crear fins y tot, illusional, from Bettelsan, the moon will be without. The man que él perdone las nuevas luces y his fields. I want to tease you a little by postponing the translation, but you will get to hear that in English. Translating involves, it's a whole lot easier to translate somebody who's dead. In fact, you know why?
I can't argue.
They can't talk back. So I say 99% of the battle is establishing trust. So that requires a great deal of time and communication. We had to spend a long time in Barcelona and Valencia. And this is Joan Marguerite, You can't tell from the picture that there are people walking by and going, "Oh, Arnie, and who's the guy who's with you?" He's an amazing, amazing writer. Trust. You've got to earn trust. This is Mario Sampere. He's 91. He's not well. He leaned over to me. You could never remember that I don't really speak Catalan. I believe that I'm a Spanish speaker, so he never remembers to switch to Spanish and talk to me. So half the time he used to whisper in my ear in Catalan. He says, "If you're going to do this, if you want me to read the book, you want me to have a book, you better hurry up." And more talking. And still talking. Rosa Font. Carissa Pascual. Manuel Furcano is the director of the Remote Institute that promotes Catalan literature. This is a real character here, David Castillo. He's the youngest in our book. Jordi Baez on the top, in top left, is Jordi Baez Pozo. Did Jordi, is he watching?
I don't think so. Haven't seen it.
He might still be, no, he'd be having dinner with us at about right now. The time is in Barcelona.
8 hours.
So it's about 8, 9 o'clock. We talked, we got on a train in Valencia. We went all the way to Valencia. Remember I told you the research was fun? And it doesn't cover that in the Comcam book. We've got a whole new chapter to go in that book. We went to meet this man. You can't tell from this picture what a crazy man he is. Delightfully crazy. I mean, and he's also the son of Gadia. We started our conversation when we picked us up at the train station at 11 o'clock in the morning. And before we really realized it, it was 3 o'clock in the morning the next day. It was the longest conversation that any of us had ever had with anybody. We took some time out to go to a seafood restaurant. He literally ordered everything on the menu. And please, I hope, but he doesn't have internet. He makes his wife type everything. He literally ordered everything on the menu and gave me the bill. Wow, 475 euros. I'm a teacher, right? I was on my own money there. This guy, Dr. Richardson, you're gonna love this. He's modeled, he built this is Pons, set of Pons. He lives in Menorca. Yet another dialect of Catalan. He does know English, and he built a replica, an exact replica of Walden's cabin in his backyard, and that's where he does his writing. He loves Walden, he loves Robert Frost, and but he's just a different, he's so tender and so funny. He can be extremely funny, and he's rewritten the Bible. We have a poem that's 50 cantos long in the book, in which it's called Bible Stories. And Dawn, I think you're going to love that part. You'll get one free when it comes out. But it's really, really funny. And a very tender man. But you can see that Pons is not going to say the word sunset, for example. Pons will say, Ora Baixa. But in Valencia, Pascual, Guerra, the crazy man, talk all night. He says, Vesprada. John Marlon uses the word for sunset, capistra. See how radical the changes can be. But that's understandable. Let's make it a different language. Just makes it a different dialect. So what is the difference between a language and a dialect? Well, in here we might, if there's a bus stop over by Walmart, you can get on the bus. But if you're in London, you get on the lorry. Here in New York, you might get on the subway. There you get in the tube. Right? Here we go to a toilet. Over in London, they would go to the loo. Right? So we can understand each other. Just a few, That's really what a dialect is. It's the same language. Just down here, so I still am not comfortable with this, but down here you say, yes, sir. What? We fought a bloody revolution. They say, y'all. I had to learn how to spell that. I thought it was Y-A-W-L. It's Y-A-L-L. I had some southerner corrected me immediately. Y'all. I think one of the hardest parts for translating is when you reach those moments that are untranslatable. There is and poets are playful. They never really grew up. The language just got more sophisticated. And Pierre has a line that's absolutely impossible to translate. Just like Pierre writes, "Il vole la vue et vue à l'autre." What he's doing there is he's using the same word, view, which means see, also means speak. Right? And he's doing what we call in Greek, chiasmus. Dr. Andres, how do you pronounce chiasmus correctly in Greece?
Chiasmus.
Chiasmus.
It's like an H rather than a CH.
Chiasmus.
Chiasmus.
It means a crossing, where one term, well, I'll give you a famous example of that in English. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Right? But if you're using exactly the same word to do a chiasmus, it'd be ask not what you can do for you, but what you can do for you. See? This publisher says, no, you can translate that. No, Jeffrey, this name is Jeffrey, no, Jeffrey, you can't. You cannot translate that. So there are, that's when it's appropriate to make a footnote. Speaking of research. He does it all the time. He says, "Kalanit kom tau." And tau, the tau. Different meanings. Night, one means night, another is like a layer. The bear sleeps in a layer. Cow, kalanit kom tau. It's not a chiasmus, it's a repetition. Night falls like a layer, but it's lost so much. So in translation, we talk about loss. Most people focus on loss. We also talk about gain, right? You get something new when you take something from one language and put it into another language. We should all be at least bilingual, trilingual, because if you know another language that you can't think the same thoughts in another language. The whole feeling changes. As soon as my car crosses the puente in Juárez, estoy hablando en mi mente en español, todo está cambiando. I'm hearing mariachis. But if I'm thinking in English, I'm thinking about my forefathers, like William Bradford. Yours, my other grandfather, Samuel Sewell, maybe the Burr Witch today. Crush them. And by the way, my grandfather, Samuel Sewell, the only one of the chief magistrates in Salem that apologized. If you go to Boston, there's a plaque in the South Boston Church where he said he was sorry. Sorry. Okay. Well, that's good. Also, people will want to know about influences. What influenced Catalan literature? A ton of things. First and foremost, Petrarch, which I find a picture of Petrarch, an Italian poet, who creates the sonnet. Right? So to this day, Joan Marguerite and others will use the Petrarchan form of the sonnet, not the Spenserian, not the Sidney form, and not Shakespearean, but a Petrarchan form of sonnet. And well, I will come back to that. It's about influences. The rebellion against totalitarianism is huge in Catalan poetry. The rebellion against fascism and patriarchal tyranny is enormous, an enormous influence, dating actually to before the end of the 19th century, when people, when anarchy, you see the sign, the A sign. My little boy, many years ago, I remember seeing the sign everywhere. In Madrid, this A with slash mark, it stands for Spanish anarchy. The Spaniards are not unique, and the Catalans are not unique in writing a poetry of revolution. And one of the, so some of their influences are obviously other revolutionaries. So for example, there's a painting of Lord Byron, who long before hippies was all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Well, sex and drugs, I don't think. Sex, drugs, and probably base of it. Then there's a picture of Franco with Pope Pius V. They're keenly interested in what's going on in the 50s. You know, there was a blackout because of censorship of what people were allowed to read and to listen to. You know, certain Beatles songs, they could hear the love songs, I love you, yeah. I love you, yeah. Oh, we started. But now the stuff is current to them. Our generation's is current. So in the bottom right photo, you recognize that guy? Yeah. I'm not going to share my personal interactions with Allen Ginsberg, but there's a picture of Allen Ginsberg there. Next to him is Bob Dylan. I think that the next to him is that Kerouac? This one here. And I don't know who that is. Ask if there's somebody out there will recognize this. I couldn't recognize that guy. Of course, Bob Dylan. In fact, Castillo, that one of the poets, has just finished a biography in Catalan of Bob Dylan. The summer we were there, the summer of 2016, there was the Contemporary Art Museum in Barcelona, as well as the Pompidou in Paris, were holding massive whole floor exhibitions in honor and respect for the Beat generation of Ginsberg and Kerouac and Burroughs and that group. And of course, the 60s had a huge impact. This is a famous photograph that resurfaced during the last campaign. Remember that is. That's Bernie Sanders getting arrested in 1968 at the Chicago Convention. Catalan is a lyric poetry. That means that the Catalan poem aspires to music. First and foremost, the language will aspire to music. The lyric poets dismiss having any kind of story in their poems. But the attraction to the Americans and American literature has caused some of the Catalan writers to tell stories. So you have a kind of mix between narrative poetry and lyric poetry, some that's in the middle. in the middle of the night. This is the poem I started reading to you earlier. In the middle of the night, the air is freezing, so cold the nightingale won't sing. With my forehead pressed against the window, I ask my 2 dead daughters for forgiveness because I rarely think about them anymore. Time has left dry clay over the scars, and besides, when one loves someone, forgetfulness follows. Light has the same hardness as drops that fall from frozen cypress trees. I place a log, stir the ashes, and the flames flare up from the coals. As I'm starting the coffee, your mother from the bedroom smiling says, "What a wonderful smell. You have risen so early this morning." Fire, what is it? Resurrection. It's so simple, but the more you read poets like John Marguerite, who reminds me a lot of Robert Frost, it's a deceptive simplicity. So I'm gonna pause there. I could talk for 3 a.m. in the morning, but I want to leave some time for questions. Is there anybody?
No questions yet.
It's in Japanese.
Yeah.
Translating poets who were rebellious, like Racine, or especially Joseph Pierre, who's very influenced by French symbolism. André Breton, Wittgenstein, in the 1920s are getting together in Paris and think, what can we do to rid our psyche of grammar and tyrannical grammar and punctuation? So, well, you could be a Western. No offense, it's a terrible, snarky remark. No. Or we could hack away at syntax, and throw out punctuation, make it hard as hell for anybody to follow what we're saying. And that's what Pierre does. He leaves a lot of white space full. That's like natural in Chinese. I don't know if you know this. I've translated from Chinese also. But the Chinese don't use punctuation. It drives me batty. A line of Chinese, well, from your perspective, a line of Chinese has nothing at the end of it. They're beginning to adapt a period, but only times. And so it's really like translating piano is a lot like translating Chinese. Then you have languages that have no articles.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that's really infuriating. Is that a definite blue bird or an indefinite blue bird? Okay, well, if there's nobody in the dark web to pose questions, yes.
To me, translating prose language is easy, but translating poetry and capturing lyricism and the music and the rhythm is just so very, very difficult. How in the world do you deal with that?
That's my 50% of this project.
Oh, I see.
I thought it was a brilliant idea when we decided on a methodology to go back to St. Jerome in the 4th century, who was responsible for the Vulgate Bible, and we do this kind of back translation where she would give me her version lost, and then I would come up with kind of English version, and then instead of telling her the English version, I would say it back with her in Castilian while she's tracking the Catalan text. Make sure that it's faithful. First, we want to capture meaning. Then, once I have a really good grasp, then I use my ear, such as it is. Some people think it's okay, but I use my ear. So nothing in there will sound very academic. One of the biggest criticisms of what I Catalan, a very famous translator Catalan, but people don't like the translation because they're funky, they're academically translated. So there's two philosophies, really competing philosophies. One is a German philosopher named Schleiermacher. You probably heard that.
No.
The Schleiermacher, well, you can learn that, the Schlegel, Schilling, Schleiermacher.
They get confused.
Yeah, that's all the essays.
Schiller all the way.
So Schleiermacher writes a treatise about translation where you bring the text to the reader. And even if it's so that they have kind of exact understanding of what's in the text, no matter how bad it sounds in the target language. The American and British idea of translation is more, let's bring the reader to the text and let them experience a new poem, let them experience something beautiful. So if I don't like the translation so close, I translate pretty freely. This was pointed out when I came out with the book, the Abril, the British Wife. When it came out, a lot of people said, well, a lot of people thankfully said, this is very good. But, others said, he translates freely. So Robert Bly and I are on the same page in terms of how we translate.
You have to do that, especially with metaphors, because if you don't want to translate and write it.
Yeah, pues el fondo es el punto, but anyways, in French,
Yes.
il faut nécessaire d'être un poète. So I had established myself first as a poet, not as a translator. And there are people who translate, but I think, yes, I think you have to be a poet. You have to have the soul of a poet. There's a free book, and I haven't read it yet, but it was in the free pile in the Mesa building. It says, creating the corporate soul. I said, whoa, that's an oxymoron. I got to figure out what's going on here. I think I wrote this somewhere. If you want to create a soul, you have to have the employees write poetry. In fact, as you know, dinner guests are expected to bring a poem or write a song when they come to dinner. To sing a song, write a song, write a poem. But that's the requirement for having dinner with us. Okay, remember that.
Okay, I got one ready.
Yes.
Yes. Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate you for the book, especially for this project of bringing the Catalan poetry to the world, which is wonderful. I'm from Spain also, and even in the rest of Spain, since Catalonia is Spain, in the rest of Spain, we know only a few of the poets from Catalonia.
But you know, John already.
Yeah, Espriu, Joseph Cornet, Foix, Vicente Foix.
You probably know Pierre, because he's so famous for his work on doing
That's
the
right.
Arabic poetry.
This is wonderful, and I congratulate you for that. But I would like to say that I don't agree with the presentation you made, because you made a case here for half of your presentation almost for the independence of Catalonia, like justifying what is happening right now in Spain. And I think that many of the things that you have presented doesn't hold to the facts, to the historical facts. I don't know where to start, but I would say this. Catalonia has a government of autonomous government, which is has an autonomy which has no parallel with any other autonomies in the world, even in federal countries. And it was voted by the Catalans in 1978, and they voted that constitution, which is the law in Spain. They voted that, in higher degree than the rest of Spain. And the reason the President Puigdemont is out of Spain is because he chose to go out of Spain, because he was a representative of the Constitution. He was given the power by the Constitution of Spain, which he did not respect. He broke the law, and that's why he's being accused of several things that he has to face now. I could, go over many things that you've said here. And I would like just to say that Catalan literature is written in Catalan and in Spanish. There are many good and very well-known worldwide writers, Catalan writers, who write in Spanish. And Spanish and Catalan, they go together for centuries. And that is
I give you the introduction and have you point out some of these things?
I would like
Because there's still time for corrections.
Catalonia has never been a kingdom. Spain,
Right.
never.
No, it's
Never.
not.
It
Conquer-
belongs to the kingdom of Aragon. So this brings us to the claim of being independent. It's never been a kingdom. It's never been a country. There has never been like an imposition over Catalonia.
But what part of Spain are you from?
I'm from Andalusia.
Can I give you a copy and have you put some of the counter remarks? I am really trying to be fair to in representation. I know that the Catalans feel, whether it's real or perceived,
To
that
speak
they're
about the
overtaxed.
Catalans, you are speaking about a faction, part of Catalonia, not the whole. Catalonia is not
Of course,
the
of course,
whole.
that's right.
It's not one side. It's
Well, I said earlier that the majority in Catalonia oppose the independence movement. And that was certainly true. Everyone we spoke to said, even if we wanted to, it's not impractical. You can't just untie yourself in the EU. That's not going to happen. So, no, what I am trying to be fair. So, in all fairness, if I could give you a copy of that, we have several weeks before the next phase, which is the second proof phase. We're only the first proof, the second proof. And I'd love to hear this. There is an order.
Do you have any other observations? I know it's been great.
I have a curiosity. Are there any plays that are being written in Catalonia?
Plays,
Drama?
dramas, yes. One of our poets is Forte, his name is Formosa. And he's done a lot, actually he's also done plays. Most of his plays are produced in Germany. Permian, Formosa.
As far as I know, Catalan is a dialect from Provençal language.
Provençal, that's right.
Spain, but it's from
Troubadours. So that tradition of the troubadour. And that tradition carried over to Mexico. So when I went, my first wife who passed away was from Mexico. And when I went to propose, I took my guitar and I stood underneath her balcony in Mexico City and I played a love song. Do that way. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.